is less than the kind of costs that validators would incur to commit fraud, then this is like a crypto economically secure system. But
like the validators from the L1, they are also validating L2, right? And they're taking on the additional risk of slashing all these L2s.
So they can only be slashed on the L1, but yeah, they basically choose which rollups that they want to provide these pre-comps for.
But they can do multiple different L2s, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we have like an interface in our AVS that allows them to opt in and out of different rollups. And in the case of Hyperlane, we have like our special sauce is like modular security, which is like this settlement between two chains, we have like basically generalized. So yeah, rollup bridges, obviously like users are very familiar with and they kind of understand, but you know, a lot of rollups now have switched to hosting to Celestia, right? And we can still have the same construction using like a Celestia light client to communicate the state roots to Ethereum, or we can use Stride, Stake TIA. So basically any shared settlement layer, this construction can work. It doesn't have to be rollups. Like it could be any chains that have a strong settlement mechanism to some shared settlement layer.
And the layer one, that is the AVS?
So our AVS doesn't actually have any consensus. So our AVS is just implemented in smart contracts. And there's no consensus amongst our validator set either. So yeah, the AVS you can think of as just like the state machine on the L1, but it's all smart contracts. Hey, what's up? Yorke.
We're going to have a pretty interesting panel on the other side, the next room, if you guys are interested in joining.
Cool.
He's giving a panel right here.
Right here, right now.
Right now.
It's a private presentation.
I'll leave you guys to.
Is it busy over there?
No, but it's because it's so hard to find the room.
Yeah.
I want to make sure people know that, like,
It's the same
some
here.
pretty cool talks happening in Zoom in 10 minutes. But
Trouve pas les gens. En fait, c'est pour ça la personne. C'est pas la
You understand this?
Sorry?
Do you understand French?
No.
So like, I'm not too familiar with the AVS stuff.
Yeah.
The AVS, that's like the mechanism from Eigenlayer, right? That's distributing the security across.
Yeah. So.
Like they facilitate the economic security.
So basically, like staked ETH can be delegated to any AVS or any operator. In our case, it's a Hyperlane validator.
Yeah.
Which means, like, as a user, I can take my staked ETH, and I can say I want to delegate it to this validator, this Hyperlane validator, and earn some additional yields.
Yeah.
So it makes the LSTs more productive at no additional like cost of capital. And in this type of construction, I would argue at least that like you're not really taking on much additional like counterparty risk beyond like you basically have to assess the rollup bridges. But we have like good frameworks for underwriting that now. So yeah, I think like this is how I see basically us achieving the like future where users can just move between rollups like in a chain abstracted way. And this is like basically an insurance market. So users will like when they send this message, they actually pay in our protocol. They pay a fee which covers some of these costs. So one of the fees they're paying is basically the insurance premium on the validators taking on that risk. And validators will basically compete for how fast they can provide this service.
But then Hyperlane is basically this set of validators that is doing the communication between the rollups.
So there's validators, and then what's missing here is the relayer, which is like a permissionless role that anyone can do. But yeah, basically the relayer is the one that actually like submits the transaction. The validators are mostly just off-chain, and the relayer aggregates the validator signatures.
Every relay, like every message relay, needs to go via a validator.
In this specific, like, because the verification mechanism prescribes that, then that's true. But if we were just going, let's say, from Ethereum L1 to L2 in Hyperlane, like you can have the verification mechanism just be like, oh, the native bridge.
Okay.
And then there's no validator set, right? So that's the modular security aspect. This is like a configurable, this is like a smart contract interface that can verify like any proof data about the origin chain. So it could be a ZK Lake client, it could be the Rollup's like native bridge, it could be this type of like threshold signature. That's what this module, we call them interchain security modules. Yeah.
And then when does Hyperlane like seriously scale? Is that when there's a billion rollups talking to each other, or if it scales like alongside eigenlayer scaling?
Yeah. So my view is you don't actually need that much economic security because I think users, like at least retail users, are not moving like a lot of money across rollups, and I think like that's more of like a institutional use case. And they're probably going like OTC or through like, you know, Wintermute or someone.
You're saying that because you
want
that there's not much stake needed.
Well, so the challenge with Eigenlayer is like you need to pay the stake delegation enough to justify their like opportunity cost of capital.
That's the challenge with the rules ABS.
Yeah, you have to pay operators enough.
How do you, unless your market cap is gigantic, it's impossible.
Yeah, so the way our system works is we charge a fee for people to, I guess I don't have it in one of these diagrams, but we charge a fee on the origin chain to basically send a message, and that covers both the cost of the relayer submitting the transaction over here and the security provisioning. So in this construction, the security provisioning is the validator set who's providing the economic security for this message to be verified. And you can scale that with the content of the message if you want to. So let's say the message is 10 USDC, the premium, like think the mental model here is definitely like an insurance market. So like the premium is going to be like a few bips on whatever the amount of value at risk is. Like think of it as like insuring your house, right? Like it's going to scale with the like assets like value that has been like assessed by some institutional body. But yeah, you can think of like for simple asset transfers, it's very discrete to reason about like how much stake you need to cover the risk. But it gets more complicated when you have like a cross-chain liquidation or like a DAO doing like a cross-chain action, because it's more difficult to assign a monetary value to that message. And that's where you need to have basically like a more sophisticated assessor of like the insurance market. You need to have like some sort of body that's deciding what the like risk tolerances should be, and like we'll basically have kind of a DAO that is deputizing some body. Maybe it's like Gauntlet or one of these type of like risk analytics labs that can look at that type of like thing. Because this is pretty analogous to like, or Tarun actually gave a talk yesterday at the alt layer day on how the kind of risk for AVS slashing. And one thing he drew an analogy to is like the risk is similar to lending protocols that have like cascading liquidations, where if there's like a single pool of stake opted into many AVSs, if one AVS has a slash, then the profit, or like then the cost of corruption in, let's say, the Hyperlane AVS goes down, but the profit from corruption stays the same. So it might actually incentivize someone to then commit fraud on the next AVS. So there's kind of like this.
Because there's less stake.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like kind of this cascading risk in these like AVS delegations. And so you really need to be very sophisticated to like analyze like the risk for like a stake delegation to be in many different AVSs. And I think, yeah, shops like Gauntlet and these like LRT vault companies are basically, that's their edge, is basically competing on that kind of like risk.
And you're partnering with those specific risk assessors?
I mean, yeah, we plan to. It's still early days, right? Like slashing isn't even enabled, but yeah, we plan to. And also, we also have to think about how much we need to pay out, right? Because that's another like input to this function of like, will everyone withdraw if we're not paying enough, which then like makes this system.
And how do you choose different risk assessors?
It's a good question, yeah. So we need to have some sort of like DAO to like decide who's like a reputable like actor or whatever. It's similar to like DeFi, right? You have like DAOs who contract out to like different shops. I'm biased because I worked at Gauntlet previously, but yeah.
Okay. What's the proportion that can be slashed with like typically?
So that's actually part of the interface to Eigenlayer is you have to configure basically the like heuristic that you're using for how you like scale up and down the slash, but I don't know if there's like a ceiling on how much.
There's no ceiling.
I think it's like a smart contract function that you implement. So you can like you can define it as an AVS basically.
Tomorrow we've got 50% of all the stake keys that are on the Eigenlayer.
Yeah.
Basically, it could all become slashable.
Well, slashing is not enabled yet in Eigenlayer, but
When they do.
yeah, and I think the market or like
That's crazy.
I guess I think the market will basically like adjust how much stake is actually in Eigenlayer before slashing goes live. I think they're all just like, mining airdrop or whatever.
They'll probably put a cap.
I mean, we'll see. I think the market is becoming more competitive with like Symbiotic and Karak and these other protocols. So
Usually migrate there to other restaking protocols.
good question. We're talking with them. I mean, the answer is honestly no. Like, or Eigenlayer at least like has like quite a complicated like integration surface area. Because like most of our off-chain infrastructure, like the validator client and everything, we've had in production for years now. We don't have to rebuild a lot of the off-chain stuff, so it's mostly just smart contract surface area, which is like maybe easier to build, but obviously like there's a lot of risk in that contract surface area, so you need to like get it audited, get it,
So you wouldn't even want to.
Well, I think we'll go wherever there's like cheap economic security, right?
Would you ever do multiple, or just try to
Yeah, I think we might do multiple. We might even have like, so we also want to extend this model to like non-Ethereum settlement layers, where maybe there isn't like a, canonical restaking protocol. And so we might even have our own like proof of stake system on certain chains and like the longer tail. But yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen is like the restaking protocol teams like they still have a lot to figure out. And so it's kind of like hard to work with them on the engineering side. So we've been trying to like hedge a bit. But yeah.
I heard the same about Rollup teams that like they'll supposedly have SDKs, but that is still not so easy to work with.
Yeah, I don't know as much about the Rollup teams. I mean, we've been trying to pitch this to like, because this is basically like the super chain as well. Like everyone's kind of trying to build towards this style of thing where it's like easy to move between rollups. And we've been trying to like collaborate with some of them on it. And I think some of them view this as like their in protocol revenue stream. And so they're maybe a little bit like afraid to leak that like edge, but yeah.
They will have this thing also now, like this, casings with this elastic chains. You know, where this kind of like.
It's like ephemeral chains.
No, that is combined liquidity all the L3s that are on.
Yeah, so just making the collateral and the bridges productive for like DeFi.
So that it doesn't fragment the liquidity. So like the polygon has the ag layer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like now the casing also has it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, the bridges just have this massive pool of like unproductive collateral that they can like try and leverage up on. I think it's a little dangerous, but we're also doing this like like with the like there's this concept of like, I don't know if you guys have seen like the native restaking on L2s, but you can basically like mint an LRT on an L2 by having the like interop protocol like go to the L1 and then like deposit the ETH into one of these LRTs and then get the like the LRT back. But you can do that in such a way where you're like not incurring the L1 costs that the user would have. Yeah. And
it's like a representation from the thing.
so the way they work, so we're doing this with Renzo right now, but the way it works is they basically reserve some collateral on the L1 for minting on like many different L2s. And you can basically kind of like optimistically give the user this like minted representation on the L2 and then just wait for settlement.
Yeah, it's an additional risk.
Yeah, and this is part of the reason why they're like constantly battling the DPEG or whatever, but like that's also how you compete, I guess. But yeah, I think that like this concept of like making the bridge collateral productive will become more and more like in vogue, I guess.
Do you think more rollups are going to use the blast model going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Blast model, like I think Blast is like not doing so well right now. In fact, they're like mad at us and Renzo because like Easy ETH basically became like this way for everyone to get out of Blast, like over Hyperlink. And so like in like a couple weeks, their TVL has gone down by like over like, I don't know the actual numbers, but I think it's like at least 60% down or something.
60%.
Yeah.
It's worse for Manta.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because Manta
Like a blast fourth, basically.
Manta was like one of our first big customers because we were doing TIA from Celestia to Manta because they had a bunch of like LP incentives early on.
Not really forks, but they use the same model. Big points program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't look so good.
Yeah, Manta is, they have good marketing, I think.
Are you working with other LRTs at Renzo?
We're talking to a few of them. I mean, it's a way, like, Renzo sees this and views this as a way for them to, like, they have a synergy with this, where they can provide some of their LRT to our AVS, and then they can use the security from that to secure the native restaking on L2s, which is like allowing users to get access to their LRT cheaply.
Exactly.
So yeah, people are very like interested in this type of model. We're talking with like Puffer and a few others about it as well, but I think USDE also has a model like this where you can like mint it from the L2s. So it also generalizes to like non-LRT, like non-restaked assets. If you want to have this like collateralized thing on the L1 that you're basically, allowing, it's like you're leveraging separation of execution with these rollups to like lower the costs for users, right? So you're still settling to the L1, but you use interop to basically like amortize the costs such that not like every user doesn't have to interact with the L1 collateral, but you can just amortize the settlement over like an interop protocol.
What's your take on the ZK account stuff?
ZK account stuff?
ZK accounts for bridging from Celestia, is that competitive with Hyperlink?
I feel like it's still early days for the ZK account stuff, although it seems interesting. I mean, I think our mental model is like we're not actually competing on the security provisioning aspect. We care more about just having the messages settle over our protocol, and like what the security mechanism is that applications use is kind of like we don't want to be prescriptive of. And we think that like, yeah, it makes sense for applications to be able to like express their own preferences for what that mechanism should be. We just think that this construction will always be the fastest and cheapest. At least, like think about ZK, right? Like computing building the proof will always be slower and more expensive. And so you have to justify that somehow. And I think users will never want to incur that in their like point of sale, click on the UI. Maybe like operators, like validators might want to incur that. So you were asking earlier, like, oh, validators are taking on roll-up settlement risk. Validators can be the ones who like say, okay, I'm only going to opt in to slashing conditions from chains that have a ZK-like client. And so then you basically like move the slow and expensive cost from like every user interaction to only when fraud occurs, which is like a more efficient model. I think this is maybe unpopular right now because like all the ZK teams want to like say how fast their benchmarks are or whatever, which is like it's cool as fuck, like, but I just think like it'll never be cheaper. Like it's a fact of like nature that like it'll always be slower and more expensive. And so why have every user incur that cost when you can like basically move that to an operator? I don't know.
Thanks, guys. I'm gonna shoot.
Cool, yeah.